Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video. And I am so unbelievably excited. I cannot believe that this is happening. But I have with me Julien Laurens, football journalist, broadcaster. He has a podcast with ESPN as well, French football expert. I'm absolutely over the moon to have him on here to talk about Poch. Jules, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited as well.
Awesome. So let's get right into it. And as you know, we're going to be talking about Pochettino to Chelsea because I feel like there's just so much to uncover there. But starting off maybe a bit generally, what's your overall opinion about Poch to Chelsea?
I think it's a great choice, I have to say. I did think that Graham Potter was a good call as well. So that doesn't mean that Poch is going to work out. But I just think he fits really well what the club wants to do now, the direction that they want to take in terms of developing younger players, for example, which they have a lot. And you see Casadei, for example, doing really well at the Under-20 World Cup right now. You can just imagine that he can be a Pochettino player so much that just that I think should fill Chelsea fans with optimism. I think he is what they need in terms of structuring the team and taking this team forward with intensity, with the style of football that we struggle to see under Graham Potter, for example. So for me, he ticks a lot of the boxes. I can understand that he might not be perfect, that there's issues in his man management a little bit, that sometimes it's a bit hard to work with for the other people at the club, including sporting directors, ownership, etc., of course. And when we talk about him in Paris, that was at some point reason of his downfall too. But I think that he's the right candidate and the right guy right now for where Chelsea Football Club are, where he is in his career as well, to take him and the team forward.
Yeah, like you mentioned, fostering youth talent, which seems to be Chelsea's strategy at the moment. We're seeing a lot of senior players potentially leaving Chelsea, but who would you say might be the core group of players, or maybe some players that you think he's really going to enjoy working with at Chelsea next season?
It's a good question, really. When you think about the teams that made him successful, so obviously the Spurs team for 5 years, let's forget the last 6 months. Even Southampton, to a certain extent, at some point, he will need leaders in that team. I think Enzo Fernandez, and I know it's simplistic because they're both Argentines as well, but I think Enzo would be for me the leader in this Chelsea's under Pochettino. And I think one, he's got a personality for it. I think he can take it. Two, for him to work with Pochettino at this stage of his career is amazing. And I can just start to imagine what Pochettino can do with Enzo in his development, considering what Enzo is already. So someone like him, there is absolutely no doubt. I would want to think that Wesley Fofana, for example, again, defensively, is typically the kind of player that Pochettino likes, someone who can play the high line, of course, defensively, who will defend on the front foot, someone with a mindset that I think Pochettino would like a lot. So players like that, and I know they're young players for sure, so he will need a bit of experience as well somewhere in there, whether it comes from a Kai Havertz, let's say, if he stays, or Raheem Sterling in the right frame of mind. Those can also be key players and key leaders for Pochettino. But certainly, I think starting with Enzo, he would be the guy. I think someone like Fofana would be the guy. Goalkeepers have always been important for Pochettino, again, in terms of leadership and in terms of commanding a defense. And I think they will go and sign someone of that kind of caliber. So there's already a few positions where for the Pochettino system are really, really important.
I love that you said Enzo, because one of the key things that comes up to me, I think it was versus Man United, that Bruno took a penalty and he kind of made some gesture at Kepa, and then Enzo went and was like, hey, what are you doing? So I think that that's the leadership that we want to see from players, and for him to be doing that in a new team, like just like learning the league, speaking English and everything, I think is super impressive. Do you think that there's going to be maybe like a bit of like lack of leadership with so many senior players potentially leaving? Like we might see Conte leave, Azpilicueta, Kai Havertz might be leaving, Mason Mount might be leading, a lot of players that I think we consider to be leaders within the club. Do you think that that might influence the season at all?
Yeah, it could be. It could be for sure. I think as much as Poch loves working with young players, and we saw the team that he built at Spurs, for example, I think this is his element in a way. He likes that if he finds younger players easy to work with because they listen, they do anything you say. A more senior player would see, okay, yeah, I've worked with other managers before you. I don't that kind of mindset or approach. That's why he likes young players, but he also knows that experience is key, that leadership, as you mentioned, is key. But someone like Ben Chilwell can be a leader and has the experience now. He won the Champions League. A lot of players of the current squad still have won the Champions League at Chelsea. They've won titles. They've played for the national team. They've worked with big name managers before. So it's still there. Of course, if you lose Kovacic and Mount and Thiago Silva and Kai Havertz and Aspilicueta and Conte, that's a lot of not just talented players, but also a lot of experience, a lot of that kind of leadership and everything. So I think they will have to compensate that at some points, somehow. That's why I like the Ugarte signing, for example, because I think he doesn't have the experience, of course, because he's young and has never played in England. But in terms of leadership and how aggressive he is as a player, I think that could have benefited a lot for Chelsea. We will find out at some point why they didn't push it more. And at some point they thought they had him. And then when PSG came back into the race, then they gave up. So I'm not really sure what happened exactly. But I think someone like him would have helped on that leadership level. For the experience, they might need to look obviously somewhere else, maybe some English players. But if you get an experienced goalkeeper to start with, that helps. Then you will still have some players who know the club well, who know the league well, still at the club. Raheem Sterling, for example, again, I would think that Pochettino now looking at the squad and he knows that, let's say, of the 31-man squad, which is far too many, they 5, 6, 7 will go. There will be some new signings. But someone like Raheem Sterling surely will have a tick next to his name and Poch thinking, okay, I can do something great with Sterling, like he did with Son, for example. This different profile, but still the idea is there. So there will still be that experience and that leadership. But yeah, depending on who leaves, I think they will have to compensate it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And thinking about the team structure for next season, we're seeing a lot of people leaving, maybe a couple of signings. You mentioned goalkeeper as being one of the key areas that Chelsea need to focus on. But do you think that there are any other positions that they need to improve in order to become a more like Poch, like a better, how do I word this? Like a team for Poch, like in the way that he likes to play, like a specific player or position that Chelsea are lacking?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we start with goalkeeper, of course. One, for the leadership I mentioned, commanding the defense. Two, I think for the distribution as well, in a way. Not that Lloris, for example, was any good at it. That's not the point. But Lloris was there when Poch arrived. Poch was happy with him for a lot of other qualities and reasons. He kept him fine. I think if you can get a goalkeeper who is a leader, also good with the ball at his feet and good on his line and good overall as a goalkeeper, then you've kind of won the lottery. So they're focusing right now on that. Defensively, there's a lot of. I think Badiashile was a good signing. He even did better than I thought. And there were times where he was not playing, where I was like, really, why is he not playing? Levi Colwill is going to come back. I don't know what the plans are with him, but he's an incredible talent. Shalobah is good. Fofana, for me, is outstanding. And if you can keep Thiago Silva for at least another year, then I think you're good. You need to work maybe on your fullbacks a little bit, but that will come. One of the key positions, and I've said it the day Enzo Fernandez signed, Enzo is not a number 6. He's not a holding midfielder. He can play there, and he did it this season in the second half of the season after he arrives. He faced, I thought, what's the word in English? Like unfair criticism in the way, because a lot of the commentators or pundits were judging him on this position he was playing, which is fine in front of the back 4 or the back 3, but that's not his best position. So I always find it a bit hard and harsh. People saying, yeah, oh, look what he does in this position, and look his positioning, and look at this and look at that, when it's not really that his best position. But anyway, I've always said that to get the best out of Enzo, you need a proper 6 next to him. He had Florentino Luis with him at Benfica. The two worked so well because of that. Of course, he can play as a holding midfielder. He did it with with Argentina in the World Cup and won it all. So great. But I still think to get the best of an even better Enzo, if you put someone next to him like Ugarte, who I think would have been the perfect complement to Enzo Fernandez, it's not going to be him, but someone like him would work great. And then obviously the elephant in the room is the striker. Whether Poch wants to give another shot at Lukaku or not, they will have to go and sign someone if it's not Lukaku. So Poch needs a number 9. He needs an efficient number 9. He needs a number 9 that will. It doesn't have to. I mean, if you think about Ricky Lambert and Harry Kane, they were both ball play. They were ballers, really. They were number 9s, but ballers. And I think he needs someone as close to that as possible for the whole system to work. And of course, I'm sure he can make it work with Lukaku. He can maybe make it work with Havertz. But it'd be much better if you had, you can dream, but someone like Osimhen would be so good, because his all-around game has improved so much with Spalletti that I think Poch could take him to another level again, and he would be so amazing at Chelsea. I don't think it would be him, but I think you need a big striker.
Yeah, it's been kind of like the gaping hole in this Chelsea side really since Diego Costa left. We haven't really had a number 9, and obviously Lukaku hasn't worked out. I don't know if I see him necessarily coming back. His heart seems like it's at Inter, but let's see. I mean, anything can happen, and he's technically still a Chelsea player. And I want to pivot a bit now to talk about PSG, because obviously you're the French football expert, so I need to get your perspective on this. So what was Poch like at PSG, and what system did he play? Do you see a similar system being implemented at Chelsea, and kind of what did he do well there?
Yeah, I mean, how long do we have and where do we start? That's the thing. Poch was a PSG player, so I grew up. I was watching him in the stadium. He was our captain as well. So seeing what he did at Spurs and covering him at Spurs, being there, seeing him, talking to him, interviewing him, all of that, I was very excited. I won't lie. I was really convinced that he would work well there, that he could take us to the Champions League and all of that. He took a bit of time to accept the job, a bit like he did at Chelsea, to be fair, which some people in Paris were saying like, oh, this is a bit weird. Like, why is this taking so long? I don't know if he had second thought. I don't know if he thought maybe this is a bit of a tricky situation, because I think he knew the dressing room was not easy to deal with. It became even harder in a way when Messi arrived in his first summer, because obviously he joined in January. I think the biggest thing for Chelsea fans who are watching is that in a way it was not the real Poch, in the sense that Pochettino had to compromise himself and compromise his methods and his style for him to kind of work at PSG in a way. I know it's hard. It's maybe hard to understand or to agree, because in a way, he kind of gave up the power to the dressing room. Instead of saying to the dressing room, okay, I'm Mauricio Pochettino, this is how things are going to work, and you're going to do everything I say, and this is my methods, and I'm not going to change for you. He went in saying, okay, I don't think my methods is going to work here. I need to be careful what I say, to who, how I work this out. And from that moment, it was not really his ideas, his style, his philosophy. I think compromise is just the perfect words. And again, it's not very nice for him, because again, we're judging him on those 18 months where he would tell you now, I could not really do what I wanted to do there, which is fine, and that's fair. But we still judge him on what we saw, whether he compromised or not, whether he decided to compromise or not, but he did. And in the end, it didn't really work out. I think the 4-2-3-1 is always his favorite system. In Paris, especially when Messi arrived with Mbappe and Neymar, you could not really do the 4-2-3-1. It would be suicidal. It would be crazy. So the 4-3-3 was the safest option, let's put it that way. I think there was a lot of criticism over the fact that he never really wanted to try the back 3 or the back 5, which I think could have worked well in Paris when he was there, and maybe that would have helped him. But he was very, very reluctant to try it. In the end, he won the title in his first and only full season. there were good things at time. There were disaster. I mean, the second leg against Real Madrid, because you live in Madrid last season at the Bernabeu when they were in control so much of the tie after winning the first leg so convincingly, being ahead in being ahead in that game at the Bernabeu, doing so well, and then it just crumbles. And where he disappointed me, and again, I'd seen it at Spurs. I was at Wembley when they got knocked out by Juventus in the Champions League. And when Juventus came back into that second leg and they scored almost back-to-back goals, Poch was like frozen. It was Elsa in Frozen. He could not move on the touchline. And in that Madrid game at the Bernabeu last season, so the season before the one that just finished, it was the same.
Mm-hmm.
I could watch it from where I was so well, and he had no answer. After the first Benzema goal, he didn't know what to do. After the second goal, he knew even less what to do. And I was very surprised. I think a manager of this caliber, but we've seen it with others. It's not just Poch. But you should, the sharpness in your head should say, okay, shit, sorry. Okay, here we're in a difficult position. I need to react. I need to do something. But he didn't do anything. Didn't talk. Didn't move. Didn't gesture. Didn't shout. Didn't scream. Didn't insult anybody. There was just nothing. It was just like that. And I would hope that he'd learn from what happened in Paris, both in terms of on the pitch, in difficult moments, in good moments as well. Also off the pitch, because he clearly had a difficult relationship with the people above him, the sporting director, even the ownership at some point. And in the end, that's what cost him the most, is that the club felt that he would not have improved that team more, that he was always going to be difficult for him if he had stayed. And that's why they sacked him. But I still love him, and I still think he's a really, really good manager. But we saw in Paris that if he compromises, it's not going to work out. If the relationship with people above him is difficult, it's not going to work out. And again, he needs a dressing room to be fully on board. And I think in Paris, even Messi was not fully on board, and they're both Argentines. So he needs the dressing room to be fully behind him. And that's what I've always said. If the Chelsea boys, whoever is still there when he arrives on July 1st or whatever, July 2nd, and whoever the new signings are, that's why he was quite keen on Ugarte. He wanted Ugarte at the club. He would need the whole dressing room, from the leaders to the young players to the fringe players, if you want, to the ones who are not going to play much, to the ones that are going to play a lot. Everybody will have to be behind him, buying into what he says and what he wants to do, which was not the case in Paris.
Yeah, thank you so much for that insight, because it's like so good. I think that we're hopefully starting to see that he's at least imprinting a little bit on this Chelsea side. I don't know exactly how much, like how involved he is at the moment, but we are seeing like Chelsea making a list of players that should be sold to hopefully get that squad size down, because I think that that's one of the things that Graham Potter and Frank Lampard definitely struggled with, is having such a large squad, and how do you manage that? So I think that that's certainly going to be key for Poch, and just having everybody buy in. But I do hope that he's going to have the control that you say that he should have at Chelsea in order for it to work. Last question for you, because I know we've been going for almost 20 minutes now. What do you think are the expectations for Chelsea next season under Poch? And do you think that they can go on to win the Premier League maybe in a few years' time, or the Champions League again?
I think Chelsea Football Club have to have high expectations. It's a season where there's no European football, which I think it's not. But I mean, I know you've lost out on money and prestige in a way. It can happen. You can miss out on Champions League for a season there and there. But it's a good thing, because the one thing I can tell you for sure, and again, something that Poch could not really do in Paris, is he's going to work them really, really hard. And there's this story that I've said before that I will repeat again for your viewers and listeners. When he was at Southampton on a Friday, every Friday, whether they were playing on a Saturday or on the Sunday in the Premier League, at the end of what was a very intense training session, even at match day -1, which a lot of managers don't do, but Poch certainly at the time used to do. Even if you were playing the next day, it would be a short session, but a really intense session on the day before. He would say to the players, okay, go and do 14 laps of the pitch. And they were like, what, 14 laps? You go, okay. So they would do the laps, 14 of them, after quite a tough session. And there would be a point in the season where they said, like, hang on, that can't continue. We can't do it. And it was not sprinting for 14 laps, but it was quite intense, quite good pace, but he was not sprinting. But still, there was like, surely that's not a good idea for us to do that. So Ricky Lambert was one of the leaders, as we mentioned before already on the show. So in consensus with the whole squad, they had a squad meeting without anybody from the staff, and they said to Ricky, Poch likes you, go and see him and just mention the 14 laps that we run every Friday. It's bonkers. So Ricky goes, okay. He goes, knocks at the door, goes into the office and says, like, listen, coach, I've been talking to the boys and we're thinking, like, do we really have to do those laps of running laps at the end of the session on Friday? And Poch goes, is it you coming on your own here, or are you really here on behalf of the whole squad? He said, no. It's a joint decision. All of us, we got together and we felt that, I should talk to you about it. And Poch said, okay, I appreciate that. And Poch is really like that. He's open. If he's not happy, he will tell you. He will always express his feelings, but he's always happy to talk and to discuss things. So he goes, okay, cool, no problem. I'll take that on board. So Ricky goes, oh, great. So he goes back to see the boys and say, like, listen, I'm sure it's fine. We're not going to run anymore. It's cool. So they play the weekend. I don't know. The week happens. Friday, training session. Again, high intensity training session. And then at the end of the training session, when they all think like, okay, we're going to go back now to the dressing room, shower, go home, he goes, okay, boys, now you're going to do 21 laps. And they go, or 28 even. I think he doubled it. They go, what? 28. And he said, and before you go, let me tell you something. Here, I'm the only one deciding what happens at training and what doesn't happen at training. You're not here to come and tell me we want to run, we don't want to run, we want to do this, we want to do that. And he was not having a dig at them. They were young players, for most of them, like unproven players. There were no superstars, for example, or no Messi, no Neymar, no Mbappe, no guys like that. But he was like, I appreciate the feedback. I'm happy to know how you feel, but I'm the one deciding here. I'm the boss. You're my team. This is my club. And they had to do the 28 laps. It went back to 14. Later in the season, they didn't have to run so much anymore. But it just gives you an insight of what the expectations from Pochettino within the squads will be at the start of preseason. He will do 3 training sessions a day in preseason, no doubt. He was doing it not in Paris, again, for the reason we mentioned, but at Spurs, some of the Spurs players could not believe it that they had to wake up at 7 a.m, do a training session at 8 after breakfast, then again early afternoon, and then again in the evening. Usually you do 2 for some days, and then you go back to 1. In preseason, you would do 3 for most of the days. So they're going to work hard and hard and hard and hard. If it's the same, then he did at Spurs, of course. It might change, I don't know, but that's what he did before. And then I think on the pitch, we should expect, and I'm not a Chelsea fan, but I'm coming with you just for you. We should expect high intensity football. We should expect a lot of running. It will take some time. Let's get that right. Don't expect on the first game of preseason doesn't really count, but on the first game of the Premier League on August 12th or 13th or 11th, whenever they play, to see already this kind of style of we press high, we counter press well, we're all playing as a team, of that kind of intensity. It will take a bit of time, I think. I would love him to get it straight away. I think it will take a bit of time. But you will see eventually. I'm convinced that it will work. He will make it work. He will make that squad click. And I don't think he needs too much. And already, I don't like Frank Lampard. I like him as a person. I don't like him as a manager. I don't rate him at all. I don't think he's good. I don't think he should have been appointed for the last 10 or 12 games of the season. I think that was a big mistake. But even under him, at times, and you mentioned the United game, we saw that they could play. So you put Pochettino there with a better squad, with less players, with new signings, with the right number 9, and I think he will make that work. So expectations will have to be, again, they will have to fight for top 4, especially without Europe. I don't think the title is in the conversation, but top four has to be the objective without a doubt, and maybe a domestic cup. But without Europe, they will be in such a strong position. You've got one game a week only. You have a lot of time to prepare every week for your Premier League game. This is a huge advantage for a manager like Pochettino and a team like Chelsea. So for me, the objective is top four. Anything else above that is a bonus, whether you finish third, second, first, of course, the domestic cups, and to get to hit the ground running as quickly as possible and make this team a proper team and a proper Pochettino team, which again was not the case in Paris, but was the case at Spurs.
I love what you said there, because I feel like this team, I think Frank Lampard said, like, they haven't been training well, because at some point you just feel like the season is done and then they haven't been training as intensely as you would expect like a Chelsea side to train. So I love to hear that he's going to work them hard, because this team is capable of things. It's just a matter of like getting that from training onto the pitch. And like you said, it could be a massive advantage. I think that that's one of the things that especially Graham Potter maybe struggled a bit with this season, was the rotation of, okay, I have a game and then I have another game 2 or 3 days later. And how do I pick a squad that's strong enough for this game, but then is still going to be rested, but able to compete in the next one? So that kind of takes that out of the equation as well. So you've totally hyped me up about this Poch signing.
That's good. That's good.
Now. So fingers crossed for preseason. But Jules, thank you so freaking much for coming on, for giving me
pleasure.
so much of your time. I appreciate it so much. And let everybody know where they can find you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. You can find me on Twitter. I think I'm at Laurens Julien. On Instagram as well, the other way around, Julien Laurens, I think, something like that. And you can watch the Gab and Juls show pretty much everywhere in the world. So we are on some channels. You can listen to the podcast as well, ESPN FC. I'm regularly on, and then you can read me on ESPN. You can listen to me if you speak French on French radio, French TV, everywhere. You know, I would always be somewhere. So thank you so much for having me. It was an honor and a pleasure. And I hope people enjoyed the episode.
Thank you so much. So guys, I'll make sure to link all of those links down in the description box below. I really hope that you enjoyed this episode and found it as insightful as I did. Hope that you guys have a great rest of your day, evening, whatever time you're watching this. And until next time, I'm out. Bye.